Hello everybody, welcome to another Yellow Chair devotional. We have been doing a science experiment together every single day. Then we've been opening up our Bibles and seeing what can we learn? What's something new about God, the master scientist? And what can science teach us that maybe relates to the Bible? So today's experiment is going to take a little bit of time. We're going to jump right into it because I just set my teapot here with boiling water, so I want to use it while my water is hot. So I'm going to move the calendar. I'm going to move the camera down so you can see what we're doing here. Okay, so I have a glass jar here, and my jar is really nice because it tells me what my measurement lines are. So I'm going to fill it with 2 cups of hot water, which is about half full. So this is boiling hot water, so you might need an adult's help with that step. Now I've got a little plate. I'm going to put it over the top. And now I've got some ice cubes. And we're going to coat the top here with ice cubes. Now, what do you know about the water cycle? Water is unique in that we can see the 3 states of matter. Here it is in a liquid form. Here it is frozen in solid form. And then what do we see with the heat of the water? Maybe when you're boiling water on the stove, it's gas form, it's steam. Well, we're catching the steam here, aren't we? Because I sealed it off with my plate. And now I've got these ice cubes that are gonna sit there. And what's gonna happen when the steam rises up? Well, this is going to take a little bit of time, and it's going to be a little tricky for you to see on the camera. So hopefully this is an easy enough one that you can try at home. But watch and see if we can make it rain. We're going to set a little water cycle going here in this jar, because what's going to happen is our hot water, it's evaporating off steam, but it gets caught. And the plate, it's cool because of my ice cubes on top. But already my ice is starting to melt. And if I touch here, my plate's getting warm underneath. And so what's happening is that steam, it's hitting the cool, and it's going from gas back to liquid. And you're gonna notice you might start seeing drops dripping down the sides of the jar because it's starting to rain. We've got the full water cycle going. So as you watch that with me here, we're going to read in the book of 1 Kings chapter 18. Have you heard of a guy named Elijah? Now Elijah, he was a prophet for God. That means he was a voice. He was a mouthpiece for God. He was a messenger. And during this time, God's people, the Israelites, they weren't following God. In fact, the King Ahab, Bible says that he was evil. He did not listen to God at all. And to try and break through and reach the people, God said through Elijah, I'm not going to let it rain. I'm not going to let it rain. I'm going to send a drought. Send a drought. And I don't know, but here in the Dakotas, sometimes we hear the word drought. We really want rain, don't we? Oh, did you see a water drop? There it's starting to go. There it's starting to go. We are maybe familiar with droughts. The farmers and ranchers, we pray for rain. We don't want there to be wildfires like there are sometimes in the summer. Oh, we want rain. And so imagine God is saying, I want the people to turn to me so that we have a relationship, because I love them, but they're not listening. So I'm not going to let it rain. I'm going to send a drought. And in 1 Kings chapter 18, there is a showdown. There is a showdown between the prophet of God, Elijah, and the prophets of Baal, this idol that they were worshiping. And the prophets of Baal, Elijah challenges them and says, let's build an altar. Let's have a contest here. Let's see who truly is God. And they're trying to demonstrate to the people who God is. So this is 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 20. It says, so Ahab called all the Israelites and those prophets to Mount Carmel. Elijah stood before the people. He said, how long will you try to serve both Baal and the Lord? If the Lord is the true God, follow him. But if Baal is the true God, follow him. But the people said nothing. Elijah said, I am the only prophet of the Lord here, but there's 450 prophets of Baal, so bring 2 bulls. Let the prophets of Baal choose 1 bull, let them kill it and cut it into pieces. Then let them put the meat on the wood, but they are not to set fire to it. I will do the same with the other bull, and I will put it on the wood, but I will not set fire to it. You prophets of Baal, pray to your God, and I will pray to the Lord, and the God who answers the prayer will set fire to his wood. He is the true God. And all of the people agreed that this was a good idea. Then Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, there are many of you, so you go first. Choose a bull and prepare it. Pray to your God, but don't start the fire. So they took the bull that was given to them and prepared it. They prayed to Baal from morning until noon. They shouted, Baal, answer us. But there was no sound. No one answered. They danced around the altar they built. At noon, Elijah began to make fun of them. He said, pray louder if Baal really is a god. Maybe he's thinking, or maybe he's busy or traveling, or maybe he's sleeping, so you have to wake him up. So the prophet prayed louder. They cut themselves with swords and spears until blood flowed, because that was the way they worshipped. Oh, look at all of those raindrops. The afternoon passed, and the prophets continued to act wildly. They continued until it was time for the evening sacrifice, but no voice was heard. Baal did not answer. No one paid attention. Then Elijah said to the people, now come to me. So they gathered around him. Elijah rebuilt the altar of the Lord because it had been torn down. He took 12 stones. He took 1 stone for each of the 12 tribes of Israel. Elijah used these stones to rebuild the altar in honor of the Lord. Then he dug a small ditch around it. It was big enough to hold about 13 quarts of seed. Elijah put the wood on the altar. He cut the bull into pieces and laid them on the wood. Then he said, fill 4 jars with water and put the water on the meat and on the wood. Then Elijah said, do it again. And they did it again. And then he said, do it a 3rd time. And they did it the 3rd time. So the water ran off the altar and filled the ditch. Wow, that precious, precious water during a drought. And what does Elijah say? Oh, cover the sacrifice with it. Cover the altar with it. Fill it so it is just soaking. Is it easy to set things on fire that are wet? No. But do you think God's about to do something amazing? And do you think the people might have been so maybe surprised to go, how is he wasting this water, our precious water, during this drought? Well, verse 36. It was time for the evening sacrifice, so the prophet Elijah went near the altar. He prayed, Lord, you are the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. I ask you now to prove that you are the God of Israel and prove that I am your servant. Show these people that you commanded me to do all these things. Show these people, answer their prayer. Show them that you, Lord, are God, and then the people will know that you are bringing them back to you. Get all of our ice melting here with our water cycle. What do you think God is going to do? What do you think he's going to do? You think he's going to make it rain? Is he going to get rid of the drought and send water? Verse 38. Here's how God answers the prayer. Then fire from the Lord came down. It burned the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the ground around the altar. It also dried up the water in the ditch. And when all the people saw this, they fell down to the ground. They cried, the Lord is God. The Lord is God. God answered with fire. But then at the very end of this chapter, at the very end, we see that God sends the rain. God sends the rain. In verse 44, we see Elijah telling his servant, go home now. If you don't leave now, the rain is going to stop you. And at verse 45, after a short time, the sky was covered with dark clouds. The wind began to blow. Then a heavy rain began to fall. Oh my goodness, the drought was over. Just like our water cycle here. And if I move the ice around, you can see there's more drops kind of falling. Just like our water cycle, God is in charge of all of that. He's the creator of all of it. He created the water cycle because God is the master scientist, isn't he? He said, what if I had a solid, a liquid and gas. And what if they went around and around? Like think about in the summer, have you ever had one of those muggy days where it's super, super hot, and then before you know it, in the afternoon or in the evening, the clouds start building and you go, a storm is coming. It's because all of that humidity, all of that moisture in the air, those muggy days, it rises, it hits the cold up in the clouds because it's colder the higher up in the atmosphere we go. It hits the cold of the clouds and then drip, 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 it condenses, and we get ourselves some pretty great thunderstorms. But I wonder what that thunderstorm was like that Elijah experienced. Imagine that, not only a thunderstorm, but first, fire answering that the Lord is God. Baal, the idol, no matter what the prophets did, there was no answer because it's not the true God. Sometimes God shows himself in really big ways out in creation. Fire from heaven, splitting the Red Sea, sending a downpour of rain. Sometimes it's in a smaller way. When you've gone outside and maybe you see those first green sprigs of grass or buds on trees or flowers after a long winter. Oh, isn't that exciting to see? Maybe it's the smell of the dirt when you're planting a garden. Maybe it's when you're going on a walk or a hike and you discover a really pretty corner of nature. Maybe with running water, maybe at the lake. Maybe it's a beautiful sunrise or sunset. God uses nature to pronounce, to share his majesty, to share his love with us. He did it in a big way for Elijah. Sometimes he does it in small ways for you and me. So I challenge you, be looking out in nature for the small ways that maybe God is surprising you and saying, hey, do you like that? I made it just for you. That rainbow, that flower, that really beautiful breeze, and you can hear the birds singing, that deer that comes to the yard and is so close and just stares at you with those big eyes. God's going, hey, all of creation, I made it all. It's so special to me, and it's a way that we can worship and spend time with God. So be looking for that. All right, explore the water cycle for yourself. Pay attention the next time you get a storm. It's the same type of thing with snow. Think about how does it work when we get snow? Have you ever heard the phrase, it's too cold outside to snow? Thinking about what we know about the water cycle, how does that play into a snowstorm? Can it be too cold not to snow? That's your challenge when you're thinking about the water cycle and doing this on your own. Let's say a prayer and close our time. Dear God, we're so thankful that you use nature, you use weather as a way to reach our hearts. Just like with Elijah, from the fire from heaven to the rainstorm, the people proclaim the Lord, he is God. And we do the same, whether it's looking at a beautiful sunset, maybe it's spending time outside in a pretty spot, whatever it might be. Nature proclaims how beautiful and wonderful you are, and we're thankful for it. We thank you in your name. Amen. All right, there's some questions in the video description below if you want to dive a little bit deeper into this experiment and just be thinking, how many different ways can you see the water cycle at play throughout the day? There's probably more than you might expect. I'll see you next time.